I still remember the way the hallway light brushed across his chest that night. Quiet, golden, almost unreal. His eyes met mine for a second, steady and unreadable, and I knew right then this wasn't going to be just another night. It had all started with a phone call. "Hey kid," my Uncle Derek said, his voice warm like always. "Heard about the breakup. You hanging in there?" I wasn't. Not even close. I was 27, freshly dumped, barely eating, and weeks behind on rent in New York. So when he said, "Why don't you come stay with me for a while?" I said yes without a second thought. He lived upstate, in a cabin tucked between tall pines, the air thick with cedar and old whiskey. He was 43, tall, rugged, the kind of man who looked like he split wood in the morning and made pancakes after, the kind of man who carried calm in his silence. He'd always been my easygoing uncle, the one who listened, never judged, and spoke to me like an equal. I'd never thought of him beyond that. Not until this visit. He met me at the station in his Jeep, sleeves rolled, sunglasses on, his usual half-smile in place. "Damn," he said, nodding at my bag. "You packed light." "Didn't think I'd stay long," I muttered. "Stay as long as you need," he said, resting a hand on my shoulder. "You're safe here." For some reason, those words sank deeper than I expected. Maybe because I hadn't felt safe in a long time. The first few nights felt simple. He gave me the guest room, cooked for me, made coffee in the mornings. We watched movies in the living room, sharing quiet laughter that filled the house. But sometimes I'd catch him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking, just for a second. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it meant more than either of us wanted to admit. Then came that night. Thunder rolled across the hills. Rain hammered the roof. I woke up, thirsty, and walked out to the kitchen, half asleep, barefoot, wearing just my boxers. I didn't expect to find him there, standing by the window, shirt off, a half-empty glass of bourbon in his hand. The rain glowed against his skin as lightning flickered outside. He turned when he heard me. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, his voice rough, tired, carrying that late-night kind of honesty. I shook my head. "Just needed some water." He nodded, poured a glass, and handed it to me without looking away. For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy and strange, like the air right before a storm. His eyes lingered, not in a way that was inappropriate, but like he was studying me, seeing the version of me that had grown up, fallen apart, and somehow ended up here again. "You've grown a lot," he said quietly, almost to himself. I didn't know what to say, so I just took a long sip, hoping the cold water would calm the heat in my chest. It didn't. He sighed, setting the glass down. "You ever get cold in that room?" "Sometimes," I admitted. He gave a faint smile. "This house gets lonely at night. I forget how quiet it can be." Something in his tone softened. Less about me, more about him. About how two lonely people can find themselves standing too close, both craving comfort for different reasons. I took a step back, realizing the space between us wasn't just physical. It was moral, emotional, dangerous. "I should get back to bed," I said quietly. He nodded, though there was something in his eyes, not desire, but regret. "Yeah, you should." As I walked back down the hall, I could still feel the weight of that moment. Not because of what happened, but because of what almost did. That night taught me something I didn't expect. That loneliness can blur the lines between love, comfort, and confusion. And sometimes, walking away is the hardest, yet most honest thing you can do. He spoke softly, almost like he was afraid of the silence itself. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for his glass again, eyes distant, haunted. The kitchen felt suspended in time. Rain tapping against the window, the clock ticking somewhere down the hall, both of us caught in a space that didn't feel right yet felt impossible to break. He took a breath. "You can come talk if you want," he said quietly, his voice barely above the storm outside. "Sometimes it helps." I hesitated. Every instinct in me told me to walk away, but another part, the tired, lonely part, wanted to believe someone finally cared enough to listen. I followed him down the hallway. His room was dim, the soft glow of a lamp painting shadows on the walls. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "You can still go," he murmured. "You don't owe me a thing." I stood there, uncertain, heart pounding. There was nothing romantic about that moment. Only two broken people trying to fill a silence that had gone on too long. I just didn't think anyone would notice if I disappeared. I confessed. He looked up at me then, eyes heavy with regret. "You're not invisible," he said. "You just forgot how to see yourself." The words hit harder than I expected. I felt the tears before I realized I was crying. He didn't reach for me this time. He just sat there, letting me feel it, all the ache I'd been hiding. That night, I didn't stay in his room, but something changed between us. The lines that had blurred slowly came back into focus. Because sometimes what you need isn't touch. It's being seen, being reminded that even in your lowest moment, you still matter. When he pulled me into his arms, it felt like the world finally went quiet. For the first time in months, I didn't feel broken. I just felt seen. His embrace was steady, strong. Not in the way that made me nervous, but in the way that reminded me I wasn't alone. "You've grown up," he whispered again, voice soft, almost regretful. "You're not that quiet kid anymore." I gave a small smile. "Neither are you." He chuckled under his breath. "You think I'm old?" "No," I said honestly. "I think you've carried too much for too long." That made his expression change. Something in his eyes, guilt maybe, or longing, shifted into honesty. He reached up and brushed a tear from my cheek. "You deserve better than the way life's treated you lately," he said quietly. And then, instead of crossing a line, he just held me, tight, close, human. The storm outside faded, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. It wasn't romantic anymore. It was two people standing in the ruins of their loneliness, realizing how close they'd come to making a mistake neither of them could take back. He finally exhaled. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I shouldn't have blurred that line. You mean too much to me to ruin this." I nodded, heart heavy. "I know. I shouldn't have followed you, either." He smiled faintly. Maybe this was what we both needed, to remember we're human, not invincible. We stayed there until the storm outside stopped. When I finally went back to my room, I lay awake for hours, not because of desire, but because I was learning something painful and real. Sometimes love gets confused with the need to be seen, and the hardest kind of strength is walking away before you destroy what still matters. I blinked fast to stop myself from crying. I didn't expect the night to end like this. Both of us quiet, the storm outside fading into soft rain. By 3 a.m., I was lying beside him, the weight of everything unsaid pressing heavier than the air between us. He traced slow, absent patterns on my arm, his breathing calm, steady. It should have felt peaceful, but my mind wouldn't rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the moment where it all could have gone too far, where loneliness nearly drowned out reason. Part of me wanted to stay there forever in that fragile calm. But another part, the clearer one, knew I'd have to face morning eventually. Because no matter how much comfort I found in his presence, he was still my uncle, and that truth didn't vanish with the rain. "Derek," I whispered. He stirred, half asleep. "Do you regret any of this?" He didn't answer right away. Then he pulled me closer, pressing my head against his chest. "Only that I didn't tell you sooner how much I care about you," he said quietly. My chest tightened. It wasn't romantic anymore. It was raw, unfiltered care tangled with guilt. "I'm not letting you go," he added, voice low. "Not after this." And in that moment, I realized what he meant. He wasn't claiming me. He was holding on to something that made him feel alive again. We both were. But feelings, no matter how deep, don't erase the lines we shouldn't cross. When sunlight finally broke through the window, I woke to find his arms still draped around me. For a moment, it felt like peace. But the ache in my chest reminded me, peace built on confusion doesn't last. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, pulling me back to reality. I tried to move quietly, but he stirred, voice heavy with sleep. "Where are you going?" "Just checking my phone," I whispered. He smiled faintly, eyes half open. "You don't need the world yet," he murmured. "Just breathe." And for a second, I wanted to believe him, to stay in that soft, temporary bubble. But deep down, I knew what we needed wasn't escape. It was distance, healing, clarity. Later, he made breakfast, humming softly as he moved around the kitchen. Everything looked so normal that it almost hurt. Because part of growing up is realizing some moments are beautiful, but they're not meant to last. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen. I sat at the counter, watching him move around like he'd been doing it forever, calm, steady, humming under his breath. It was strange seeing him this way, not just strong and quiet, but gentle, human. He set a plate toward me. "Eat," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You always this bossy?" I asked. "Only with people I care about." That made me pause. I looked up at him, really looked. "Do you?" I asked softly. "Care about me?" He hesitated, then came around the counter. His voice was quiet when he spoke. More than I probably should. Something in my chest shifted. The air between us felt heavy again, but different this time. Not forbidden, just fragile. Later that afternoon, I started packing my bag. I didn't want to leave, but I also knew staying meant pretending nothing was complicated. "You don't have to go," he said from the doorway. I met his eyes. "Maybe I do." He nodded slowly. "You're probably right." He took a breath, stepping closer, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. "Just don't forget that you're not alone anymore. No matter where you go." I swallowed hard and forced a smile. "I won't." He helped me carry my things to the car. The air outside was cool, the world feeling quieter than it had in days. As I looked back one last time, he gave me that half smile again, the same one he'd given me the day I arrived. And for a moment, I understood what this really was. Not a love story, but a reminder that even broken people can help each other heal if they're brave enough to stop before they break something permanent. Because this time, neither of us held anything back. No pretending, no walls, just honesty laid bare. It wasn't about impulse anymore. It was about everything we'd both been running from. The loneliness, the silence, the need to be seen and understood. One night became two. Two became three. Before I knew it, I wasn't just visiting his house. I was living in it. I woke up to the smell of his coffee, to the sound of him moving around the kitchen like it was the most natural thing in the world. We'd laugh, share stories, fix things around the house. It wasn't supposed to feel that easy, but it did. And maybe that's what scared me the most. Because in between the comfort, there was a quiet ache. A question I didn't want to ask. One night, while the rain whispered against the window, I finally said it. "Derek," I whispered. He looked over at me, tired eyes soft. "What happens when this ends?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared ahead, like the truth was too heavy to say out loud. Then he sighed. "I don't know," he said quietly, "but I guess we'll both have to find out who we really are when it does." That silence that followed hurt more than anything we'd said before. Because it wasn't about losing each other. It was about realizing maybe we were never supposed to hold on this tightly in the first place. His eyes opened slowly. He didn't move at first, just looked at me. And somehow, his silence said everything. We both knew this wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. He had watched me grow up. The man who used to give me advice, who showed up for every birthday, who told me to believe in myself when no one else did. And now, here we were, caught between what was right and what felt too real to ignore. That night, we didn't cross any lines. We just lay there, facing each other in the dark, a breath apart. And somehow, that hurt even more. Because that's when I realized this wasn't just confusion or comfort. It was something deeper, something that scared both of us. It was love, the kind that makes you question everything. Not because it's wrong, but because it asks what you're willing to risk to be honest about your heart. The next morning, I caught him watching me in the mirror while I brushed my teeth. "You keep looking at me like that," I said quietly, "and I might never leave." He walked over, slipped his arms gently around me, and whispered, "Good, because I don't want a life where you're not here." My chest tightened at his words. Because a part of me wanted that too, but I also knew love doesn't always mean it's meant to last. Later that day, my phone buzzed. A message from my mom. And just like that, reality started knocking again. "Hey, sweetie, when are you coming home? Your uncle said you've been staying over. Everything okay?" I froze, because everything was okay, and that was the problem. How could I tell her that the only person who ever made me feel truly seen was her brother? That night, Derek found me sitting outside, staring at the stars. He sat down beside me, quiet for a while, before asking gently, "Regretting this?" I looked at him, my voice trembling. "I'm scared." He tilted his head. "Of what?" "Of losing this, of losing you." He took my hand, his thumb tracing soft circles against my skin. "You're not going anywhere," he whispered. "Not unless I stop breathing." I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of him, the calm he always carried. But somewhere deep down, I knew it couldn't last. Because happy endings aren't written for stories like ours. Not when the world refuses to understand. Then came a knock at the door. Loud, sharp, final. Derek had just made breakfast. I was wearing one of his hoodies, barefoot, half awake, feeling safe for the first time in years. But the second that sound echoed, my stomach dropped. He opened the door, and there she was. My mom. She looked at me, then at Derek, then at the hoodie. I saw her expression change. Confusion, shock, then heartbreak. "You've been staying here for 5 days," she said, voice shaking. "I asked you what was going on. You lied to me." "Mom," I started, but she cut me off, turning to Derek. "You let this happen." He stood still, his face calm but heavy with guilt. "I didn't let anything," he said quietly. "It just happened." Her voice broke. "He's your nephew." For a second, Derek didn't breathe. Then he whispered, "He's not just my nephew anymore." Her face fell. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just turned and walked away. And something in me shattered right then. My knees hit the floor. My chest burned. Derek tried to pull me close, but I pushed him away. "This is my fault," I choked. "She's never going to forgive me." "She doesn't hate you," he said, his own voice breaking. But I couldn't hear him anymore, because all I could think was, we crossed a line we can't uncross. And now, the people we loved most would never look at us the same. The next few days were torture. Mom wouldn't answer my calls. My cousin texted, "What the hell happened?" Even my best friend messaged, "Please tell me this isn't true." And for the first time, I didn't have an answer. Tell me what I'm hearing isn't true. The whispers had started. People talked. Messages came. And slowly, everything around us began to change. Derek tried to be strong, but I could feel the distance forming, like a storm quietly pulling us apart. He started sleeping on the edge of the bed. Stopped kissing me good morning. Avoided my eyes like looking at me hurt too much. And it killed me. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I found him in the kitchen, staring blankly at a half-empty cup of coffee. "Say it," I whispered. "You don't want me anymore." He shook his head slowly. "It's not that." "Then what?" I pressed, my throat tightening. "I don't want to ruin your life," he said. "They'll never leave us alone now." That night, he didn't touch me. He just held me, trembling, silent, like a man who already knew he was about to lose everything. And maybe he was, because in the eyes of the world, we weren't just wrong, we were unforgivable. I watched him lying there, pretending to sleep, and I knew the truth he wouldn't say out loud. He was already letting go, but I wasn't. I couldn't, because even if the world saw us as a mistake, even if everyone turned their backs, I had finally found someone who saw every scar, every flaw, every broken piece of me, and didn't look away. And I wasn't going to lose that without a fight. That same night, I found him sitting alone in the living room, the TV flickering against his face. He looked exhausted, not from lack of sleep, but from trying to convince himself that walking away would hurt less than staying. "You're leaving, aren't you?" I said quietly. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. There was a small pack bag by the door. "I thought maybe if I wasn't here," he said softly, "the world would calm down. That maybe you'd finally breathe again." I walked toward him, my voice trembling. "And what about you? Will you breathe again without me?" He looked up at me, eyes tired, and for the first time, his walls broke completely. "No," he whispered. "I won't." "No," he whispered, voice breaking. "I won't." Something inside me cracked open. I dropped to my knees in front of him, took his shaking hand in mine, and finally said the words I'd been too afraid to say before. "I love you." His eyes filled instantly. He touched my face gently, his fingers trembling like he was scared I'd disappear if he blinked. Then he kissed me, not out of desire, but out of heartbreak. Slow, deep, honest, like a man saying goodbye while wishing he didn't have to. I didn't let him pull away. I stood, took his hand, and led him to the bedroom. That night wasn't like the others. It wasn't wild or desperate. It was quiet, raw, human. He held me like I was the only thing keeping him standing. He kissed me as if he was memorizing me. Every breath, every heartbeat, every scar between us became something sacred. And for the first time, I cried, not from pain, but from being seen so completely. When it was over, we stayed tangled together, his chest warm under my cheek, his fingers tracing shapes on my back. He whispered, "No one's ever made me feel this alive." And I whispered back, "No one's ever made me feel anything until you." We stayed awake until morning. Not because he wanted more, but because neither of us wanted to face what waited outside that room. Reality, judgment, family, the world that would never understand. He looked exhausted, not from lack of sleep, but from trying to convince himself that walking away would hurt less than staying. "You're leaving, aren't you?" I said quietly. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. There was a small pack bag by the door. "I thought maybe if I wasn't here," he said softly, "the world would calm down. That maybe you'd finally breathe again." I walked toward him, my voice trembling. "And what about you? Will you breathe again without me?" He looked up at me, eyes tired, and for the first time, his walls broke completely. "No," he whispered. "I won't." "No," he whispered, voice breaking. "I won't." Something inside me cracked open. I dropped to my knees in front of him, took his shaking hand in mine, and finally said the words I had been too afraid to say before. "I love you." His eyes filled instantly. He touched my face gently, his fingers trembling like he was scared I'd disappear if he blinked. Then he kissed me, not out of desire, but out of heartbreak. Slow, deep, honest, like a man saying goodbye while wishing he didn't have to. I didn't let him pull away. I stood, took his hand, and led him to the bedroom. That night wasn't like the others. It wasn't wild or desperate. It was quiet, raw, human. He held me like I was the only thing keeping him standing. He kissed me as if he was memorizing me. Every breath, every heartbeat, every scar between us became something sacred. And for the first time, I cried, not from pain, but from being seen so completely. When it was over, we stayed tangled together, his chest warm under my cheek, his fingers tracing shapes on my back. He whispered, "No one's ever made me feel this alive." And I whispered back, "No one's ever made me feel anything until you." We stayed awake until morning. Not because he wanted more, but because neither of us wanted to face what waited outside that room. Reality, judgment, family, the world that would never understand. Inside those four walls, we were just two broken souls who found something rare, something real, even if the world saw it as wrong. When dawn came, I picked up my phone and texted my mom. I didn't hide. I didn't explain with excuses. I just told her the truth. Not the rumors people were spreading. Not the version twisted by shame. But the truth that I had fallen in love. That for the first time, I wasn't lost or pretending. That I finally knew what it meant to feel alive. But the truth? That I fell in love. That I never felt safe until I was in his arms. That I didn't care how the world saw us, because for the first time in my life, I knew who I was. She didn't reply right away. I just stared at the screen, heart racing, waiting. Derek looked at me after I hit send and gave a quiet smile. "You're braver than I am," he said. I shook my head. "No," I whispered. "We're just braver together. It's been 6 months now. Some people still don't talk to us. Some probably never will. But we're still here. Still tangled up in bed sheets most nights. Still making breakfast in his t-shirt. Still falling asleep in his arms every night. Because that night, the night he didn't let me sleep, was the night I finally woke up. The end.